Okay. It looks like we are live. I always get a bit apprehensive when we start going. You notice that, haven't you? I'm always a bit paranoid.
Yeah, it's always a little nerve-wracking. I don't think we could be in broadcast TV, Kane.
No. Well, I don't think we're polished enough, Dustin. I don't think we're anywhere near polished enough for broadcast TV. But nevertheless, we are live. I do need to go and find the LinkedIn link and stick that in the event, as people are starting to. There's something about LinkedIn that what it doesn't do very well is doesn't let you share it very well. And so I just
Yeah.
need to pop this in here. But anyway, how are you,
Although,
Dustin?
yeah, doing okay. Although we may be live on LinkedIn already. We've got Joe Campbell who I think is saluting us.
Hello, Joe.
Although he
Welcome.
says it's not sure if it's him, but he's not hearing anything. So
Ah,
Joe, we are speaking about you, even if you can't hear us.
I think what it is that we're probably a little bit behind, so he might be
Mm,
just seeing that intro graphic that might have been up there for a little bit longer
mm.
than intended. But anyway, here we are, live on VUX World once again. Welcome. And I'd like to give a special shout out to the Conversation Design Institute for this one. So they
Mm.
are sponsoring the podcast over the next few weeks. Some of you might recognize the Conversation Design Institute because it used to be the Conversational Academy. It's now changed. It's Conversation Design Institute. And they have the best selection of online courses for conversation designers that I've come across. And I'm not just saying that because they're paying us. It is the actual truth. I've done the course myself. I've done all of the online courses, I think. And this one is absolutely by far the best. And so as people heading into Christmas, start thinking about upskilling and training for the new year, do check out the Conversation Design Institute because it's got everything you need to become a leading conversation designer because the people who've put it together are leading conversation designers, Dustin.
Yeah. Kane, are you going to buy your family gift certificates to the Institute?
I might do.
Yeah.
Just that. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. I could learn. Well, maybe it's I need to take the course again because we could learn or do with learning how to have good conversations in our family. But no. I'll put the links in the show notes and I'll stick them on LinkedIn as well and YouTube for those tuning in. And here we are. The comments are working on LinkedIn now as well, which they weren't working before. So it's nice to see we can actually have the discussion as we go through without us
Yeah.
needing to switch channels and stuff, which is good.
Yeah, it's great to hear from everyone. If you're in the stream, say hi, and as you have questions, send those along. As you've maybe watched some of these streams before, we'll pluck some of those questions and ask them. So send them along.
Nice. And so today, let's get on with it then. Let's get on with today. I mean, I come across this concept a few months back. I know, Dustin, you're familiar more than I am with RCS messaging, but the potential for RCS messaging is absolutely huge. And I'm really looking forward to delving into the ins and outs of RCS messaging, where it came from, what it's all about, and how people can implement it, how brands can implement it, because it is, as we'll find out, what the future of conversational messaging and maybe the future of conversational commerce. And so let's welcome our guests today. We have David Clark from BT. Welcome, David.
Hi there. Hi, Kane. Hi, Dustin.
And we have Tim Atkinson from Google. Tim, welcome.
Hi, good to see you both.
It's a pleasure to have you both on. Absolute pleasure. David, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself first and what you do at BT and how you come across RCS messaging?
Sure, thanks, Kane. So yeah, at BT, I'm the strategy manager in BT Enterprise, looking after messaging. That means I look after both kind of commercial and product innovation for anybody who wants to send text messages. MMSs are now RCS business messages over the EU network. I guess I got recruited into BT a couple of years back to work in their ventures division to look at kind of developing new businesses in BT. What would be the future revenue streams? And kind of the way I came across RCS was looking at what we were already doing today, which maybe could be done better. And I saw a fantastic opportunity where actually SMS and specifically SMS use by business was growing double digits every single year, which coming from outside of the telco world was, I guess, really confusing. Maybe that's familiar to you guys, but for me, it was a real surprise to learn that actually businesses are still using text messages and the use is increasing. And that's kind of led me to kind of explore what else was out there. And that led me to find that actually RCS as a technology was being developed, which potentially could replace it in the future.
Nice, wicked. And maybe we'll, with Tim, you can tell us a bit about yourself, and as you do that, maybe you can tell us what RCS messaging stands for at the same time.
Sure, yeah, thank you. So my name's Tim Atkinson. I work for Google. I've been here at Google for about 3.5 years or so now. I work in the partnerships team, and I'm responsible for partnerships we have with our carriers or mobile operators, as many of you know them by. I specifically work on a suite of applications and services we have, which we call comms, and they're generally around voice and messaging and video. And we work very closely with our carrier partners to help them provide the best services to their Android users on their network. So we have a very close relationship with BT and EE and its sub-brands, and work very closely with David and his colleagues. So RCS specifically stands for Rich Communication Services. It's actually been around for quite a long time, nearly a decade, and it was put together initially by a group of some of the larger carriers who were looking to develop SMS. And in that time, we've obviously seen the onset of what we term as over-the-top messaging, so messaging capabilities from the big tech companies like WhatsApp and Facebook are two great examples. And RCS is very similar to that in terms of a very modern and rich messaging capability.
Nice.
Yeah, so just going to go straight to the big question. What's wrong with SMS? Why aren't we just sticking with that?
Well, I can answer that. So I think the one thing about SMS is there's nothing that's wrong with it as such, I would say. It's an old technology. It's been around for 30 odd years. I think many people will know that that SMS was something that engineers used in the US, also those networks to send data, short packets of information, data information to each other, and it hasn't evolved a lot apart from being able to make a single message longer when it appears in your inbox. So it's a legacy service that's been around a long time. If you were to pinpoint things that are wrong with it, I would say that it's security is an issue, and as we see a lot of spam and fraud. And obviously, it's just limited to text. I know you can do funky things with text. When I joined the telecoms industry 20-something years ago, SMS was a big and new thing, and we opened up interconnect in the UK between the carriers, and a lot of my colleagues said, well, why would I ever want to send a message to anybody when I can pick up this fantastic phone I've got and have a real conversation? Well, over that 20 odd years, messaging has become a huge thing. There's limitations with SMS as well. So it's black and white text messaging is simply what it is. It does stand for short message service. It is a short message service. A good way to look at it is comparing a black and white TV that has 3 or 4 channels to a full online multimedia TV which does streaming channels and is fully interactive. That's actually a good way of sort of comparing SMS to RCS today.
And presumably, I don't know this for sure, but presumably SMS messaging is slightly more pricey, is it?
I'll let David actually comment on that.
David, is SMS messaging more pricey?
Yes, I mean so I guess in terms of what's wrong with SMS, actually there's nothing wrong with SMS. It actually does what it does very efficiently. It's very effective of delivering a short message to a user and actually users open and read those messages very effectively. So there's no better channel out there other than now RCS to be able to get a user to open and read your message. In terms of price, that's where we all know that text messages aren't free. So maybe you'll get them as part of your bundle today as a consumer, but still international texting can cost you. And that's one of the reasons why we all use WhatsApp now. We all use Facebook Messenger now, for example, because it's free to message internationally. And that's where in terms of price, this is where RCS does improve upon that potentially as well, because one of the problems with SMS is because you're being charged for individual messages, it's great for short conversations, but as you start to get into lengthier conversations, imagine doing a customer care type conversation. You could have 30, 40, 50 messages backwards and forwards between an agent and a consumer. So SMS could get quite pricey quite quickly, which limits those sorts of use cases. But with RCS, because it's designed from the ground up to be much more conversational, it doesn't restrict those kind of use cases, especially from a price perspective as well.
Interesting. So, am I right in Tim? I think you had some corrections for me when I asked you this prior to this episode, but I'll try it again because I think it was good. So, what am I right in thinking then that the RCS messaging, a way of thinking about it, is that RCS messaging is WhatsApp, but natively on an Android device or a handset of some description?
Yeah, that is a good way of thinking about it, actually. I think another way to think about it, just to complement what we were just saying there, is lots of the multimedia messaging services which are used today, which have great functionality in them, they're over-the-top messaging services, as we call them. So they're provided by non-telco companies. RCS is actually a telco standard. It's a telecom standard. It's standardized through what's known as a universal profile, which is managed and maintained by the GSMA. And it's a carrier standard. You're probably going to ask me in a minute why Google involved, and we can come to that. And what it means is when the part you just said about being native is kind of critical to this. So if you think about it now, I just think everybody you know and everyone who's listening to this knows that if you've got a mobile phone in your pocket today or in your hand, it will do SMS. It's a standard thing that it does. Even if it's just a dumb sort of feature phone, it will do SMS. And that is the foundation, if you like, for RCS. So we're building upon that. And all new phones that are shipping today, Android phones, come with RCS capability built into them. And it's also part of the new 5G standards, which is, again, part of the GSMA. It's part of the 5G standards. And those who want to research this a bit more, you'll see in China now that the Chinese networks are rolling out 5G as a standard part of their 5G offerings.
Until you mentioned a couple of times Android phones, and I know you're at Google. Is that why you're mentioning Android phones, or is it only Android phones that are supporting RCS?
Yes, today it's Android phones which support RCS. iPhone, Apple haven't got into it yet. That's something that I expect to come. The industry expects to come in the future. But right now, this is about Android devices. Obviously, iPhones come with a great iMessage service, or they now call it Messages, actually, rich service, which is, again, very similar to RCS, which is proprietary Apple standard, Apple protocols that they use. And RCS is a carrier standards, which is used for that.
So then is RCS, am I right to assume that this is more B2C rather than P2P, right? Is this more businesses communicating with consumers, or are people communicating with each other? And if the latter, how do you handle it? Are you asking your friends, are you on iOS, can you support RCS? Or is it really just for those business communications?
Yeah, well, actually, it's a good question. I probably should have said that without being prompted. But yes, it's so RCS has two flavors, if you like, or two parts. There's two parts of the cake, if you like, parts of the sandwich. So the base part is what we call RCS. This is rich communication services, and this allows person-to-person chat messaging. Those of you who already have this on your Android phone, you'll never see the word RCS or the letters RCS. You'll actually see chat as opposed to SMS or MMS. It allows you to communicate and have conversations in a rich way with your friends and family and colleagues. On top of that, we have what we call RBM, which is RCS Business Messaging. RCS Business Messaging is the opportunity for businesses to be able to utilize this channel and to be able to send messages to their customers. WhatsApp do this already, and obviously it's very prevalent in SMS today. We call it A2P messaging in SMS, and it's something which has been around for a long time. But as we were saying earlier, there's limitations with SMS. Spam is actually a bit of a problem when you get a message from a business, you don't recognize the number, it might have a long URL in it, you kind of think, is that something that's kosher, is it a bit dodgy, I might not open it. And there's also a lot of fraudulent spam activity, which is not there on the RCS and RBM platforms. So what we're seeing today is we're seeing about 2.5 billion RCS messages a week, that's the P2P side of things, and we're seeing about 100 million messages a week on RBM. RBM is quite new in terms of it being around. It's launched in a number of markets around the globe, including the UK, and it's building up very, very quickly. Actually, we're starting to see more and more businesses engage with it. and start to use it as a channel to have what we call conversational commerce with their customers.
Interesting. So there's a couple of comments coming through, and I just want to kind of clarify one of them. So Michael Nelson has said, seems like Apple has zero interest in implementing RCS on their platform. But then Carl Johns, shout out to Carl as well, has said Apple have Apple Business Messaging. So I think we should just clarify what the difference is here. So correct me if I'm wrong, Tim and David, but my understanding is that RCS is the equivalent of sending a text or sending a WhatsApp message or sending an iMessage. It's the infrastructure that is laid down and the way that you send those messages between devices. Whereas the Apple Business Messaging is the equivalent to WhatsApp Business Chat, which is the equivalent to RBS, which is the ability for businesses to plug into that messaging service. Is that right?
I'd say that's close enough. That's close enough. I think that's a good approximation, Dane. I think the big difference, practically, if you're building a conversation experience, if you're designing a chatbot, the big difference between RBM and Apple Business Chat is Apple Business Chat only allows the user to initiate a conversation, and once the conversation closes, that's it. That's the end of the conversation. There's no identifier passed to the business. They can't reinitiate that conversation. They wouldn't even if the consumer initiates a second conversation, I don't believe the ID is maintained conversation to conversation. So it's very much, it's great for things like customer care, but it's only those sorts of use cases typically we see Apple Business Chat useful with RCS Business Messaging. Because it comes from the same kind of heritage as SMS with the same kind of permissions and opt-ins. Actually, with RCS Business Messaging, you can actually start conversations. So that's the big difference practically for a brand or anyone developing an experience. You can start the conversation if you've got an opted-in consumer mobile number, and you can continue that conversation after a customer's finished that conversation. So that could be practically, so what's the kind of customer journey you might have? So I might book a boiler repair, for example, with a gas company in the UK. I could do that and interact with the business and start the conversation after Business Chat, or I could do that in RBM. The difference is maybe now the business wants the gas engineer wants to tell me he's running late. Well, actually on Apple Business Chat, he can't do that. He has to send me a text or he drops me an email. But with RBM, actually, the gas engineer can continue that conversation. He can initiate that and let you know who's going to be late. So I guess that's the difference practically. But you're right, in terms of especially consumer messaging, they are islands. You cannot exchange iMessages with RCS Android handsets right now. But that's something we hope will be solved in the future.
Yeah, just to solve for that last point that David made there, that you can't send rich messages between Android phones using RCS and an iPhone using iMessage. Both actually have fallbacks. So if I'm on my Android phone, I want to send a message to my brother who actually uses an iPhone, it will just default to SMS. It will send, so I can still message them. And the same the other way, if it opens up messages on his phone, he'll see that I don't have messaging, and he'll send me a green bubble as opposed to a blue one. So we have this fallback mechanism which is built into it today, and one hopes, and the industry hopes, that maybe that will disappear at some time in a not too distant future, and we will have interoperability between the two.
We will get to one really quick one, David, and this can be quick. So Michael asked a while back, Michael Kenny, shout out to Michael, works at Google actually, Tim, fellow colleague of yours, Michael Kenny. So it was a question about price earlier on. Apologies, Michael, for not seeing it till now. But he was asking basically, is the price difference based on the data mode? Like if it's sent over Wi-Fi, it's one price. If it's sent over
so it's similar to how a consumer would be charged, very similar to how they pay for WhatsApp, how they pay for Facebook Messenger or other OTT services. It's data. So you wouldn't be seeing that you've sent 100 RCS messages to a friend or to a business, and you wouldn't be charged for 100 RCS messages on your phone bill. It would just be coming up your data allowance if you are on a cell network, 3G, 4G, 5G, or if on Wi-Fi, of course, it just goes over Wi-Fi. So it's exactly the same. It's pure. It's data. It's not a separate charge.
Cool. And you started touching on some of the stuff that we're going to get into, David, in terms of the practical use cases for this stuff from a business perspective, and what kind of things can businesses do, and what capabilities does it have? You mentioned that thing there in terms of being able to initiate the conversation and take advantage of some of those like astronomically high open rates of text messages. But first, you alluded to this earlier, Tim, which is the question: what is Google's involvement in this? Like, you know, Google, obviously a huge company, up to a hell of a lot of stuff, got Android devices, over 1 billion of those things kicking around all over the place. Where did Google get involved in this, and what is Google's role being in bringing about this RCS standard?
Yeah. So about 5 or 6 years ago, Google were looking at Android and looking at what was kind of missing in terms of the fundamentals on the Android platform. And one of the primary gaps was messaging. Android supports SMS, but it doesn't have a rich messaging service like Apple does with their iPhone. So this was actually prior to my tenure at Google, but the teams there were looking at, well, what technology should we invest in? Should we do something proprietary? Should we look at something that's standards-based? And to cut a long story short, many carriers who work very closely with Google actually asked Google to get involved along with the GSMA, and we got involved with RCS. And the T-shirt I'm wearing, it says Jibe. 5 years ago, actually this week, Google acquired a company called Jibe. We still use the name today, the Jibe name, for the name of the service. And Jibe was specializing in RCS. So we brought that capability into the business, and we've greatly built on that. And so we work with carriers all around the world, with carrier partners, to help them bring RCS to market. And we've been doing that in several ways. We've worked very closely with some carriers in the early days to integrate RCS into their networks, and it's quite a laborious and lengthy task to do that. The global scalability was going to be incredibly challenging. And where we are today is Google actually provides a global RCS service around the world. We've spent the last 18 months building this, and we've almost completed its rollout. So it's available right across Europe today. So if you are an Android user and your mobile network doesn't already offer you RCS, you'll be able to connect to an RCS service in your Messages app on your phone. And that will be provided by Google rather than the carrier itself. But it is a carrier standard service, and it's done in partnership with those carriers. And for the business messaging side of it, the carriers are actually taking the business messaging elements to market. So Google provides some tools and infrastructure for that, and there's also other third-party vendors that do that as well. And we can utilize the global network that Google has been part of building to allow businesses, aggregators, and businesses and brands to reach their customers. So Google have been playing this role where we've been working very closely with the ecosystem and sort of filling what unfortunately have been larger gaps than we would have hoped for at this stage, but filling those gaps to provide RCS to all Android users. Okay.
Nice.
I'll just add actually that BT, obviously with David here, we have many partners, but BT have been working with us very, very closely on this for about a couple of years now, I think it is. And BT use our infrastructure. If you're an EE customer or a PlusNet customer, you on your Android phone today, you'll be able to click provision yourself to accept to use the RCS service. And if you noticed it, you will see that the service is provided to you by Google. But it's there, and it's part of your phone, and it is part of your sort of carrier messaging stack. So you'll have SMS, MMS, and then what we refer to as chat messaging within your application. And we've done some great work with EE and many other carriers to kind of help get this to market, and it's now starting to really build up and become, you know, more of a global capability than it has been in the past few years.
Are there any regions where this has started rolling out or maybe being adopted more than others?
There are, but not because people didn't want it. I think maybe because some carriers kind of went to market with this sooner rather than others. Vodafone's a good example, actually. Vodafone have been providing an RCS service for a number of years now. They have a fully, across all of their, I think it's pretty much every network they have around the world, they provide RCS. I would say that in terms of the business messaging side, which is kind of what developers are really keen on developing for this and be able to provide fantastic experiences for their brands, etc. We're seeing a lot of growth, very quick growth in Mexico and Brazil. We're starting to see things grow quite considerably now in France and in Spain and in the UK as well. So those countries are some that I'll call out where RCS is becoming more widespread. We have over 30% of Android users in Mexico and Brazil, for example, who have RCS switched on their phones, and that's growing considerably. We've got significant numbers in the UK now, which is literally week by week increasing in terms of volume. So there's more addressable users that are coming online through the RCS channel.
Interesting. We've got one question. There's a couple of questions coming through now. One on the infrastructure side. Finally, one kind of more question there, and then we'll move on to the use cases, the capabilities, the potential for businesses to actually use this kind of ecosystem platform to kind of have conversations with customers. So the one that is more kind of on the technically like infrastructure sort of side is from Michael Nelson, who said that would a company like Twilio, for argument's sake, have to modify their platform and the way they do things and the way they send messages to be able to kind of incorporate this protocol?
So companies like Twilio, it's for them it'd be just another channel. So that Twilio will already offer you SMS, MMS. They'll already offer you things like WhatsApp, business messaging via the API. So for them, it'll just be another channel. There's already actually lots of platforms out there that already offer RCS today. And actually BT is one of them. So if you haven't got a platform which offers you RCS, we can offer that direct, and it's not just RCS, but we can offer you access to other channels as well. So yeah, it's already out there.
If you don't mind, maybe let's take a step back. We've talked a little bit about it, but I think we've skirted around it a little bit. Can we go deep in really what's the benefits of RCS, especially from a consumer perspective? Why would a consumer welcome RCS over SMS or MMS? You talked about some, rich payloads, things like that. What is really opened up here that you can do today on SMS or MMS, or even over a WhatsApp or a Facebook Messenger?
Sure. Yeah. Let me take that. David might want to add some bits as well. Firstly, you're getting a native messaging service on your phone, supported by your carrier network, which I know you'll all love and trust, which is available to you. That means you can chat to your friends and families and colleagues. You can have group messaging. You'll see read receipts and delivery receipts. You'll be able to send high definition pictures and videos and what else do we have? We have lots of fun and rich, interesting experiences which can be done from P2P. Very akin to, as I talked about earlier, the OTT services you had today. From the business side of it as well, as a consumer, when you receive a message from a business, and this is really important for the developers community here to kind of be aware of this. Unlike an SMS, when you receive an SMS, you quite often, or I do, I know millions of people, probably billions around the world, receive SMSs almost on a daily or weekly basis, and they're not quite sure if it's from who say it's from. Is it a scam? Should I open it? And there's a lot of, unfortunately, fraudulent activity which happens in that channel. The carriers and other businesses do a lot to combat that, but it is a problem which is always there to be tackled. From an RBM perspective, however, there isn't really any spam and there isn't really any fraud. And the reason that is because everything is managed very closely. So if a business wants to send an RBM message, they actually have to be verified before they can send that message. They have to verify that they are the business they say they are, and then when those messages are sent, they are verified. And as a consumer, when you receive that message, you actually have a verification stamp at the head of the message flow, which will tell you that the business is who it is. If it's delivered to you on your EE network, it will say this has been verified by BT, for example. So there's a lot more trust there. And also give you other information about that business as well if you don't know who they are. So I think the safety aspects in this and the removal of spam and fraud are a big thing here. And also, especially in Europe, you can't send messages across this platform unless your customer has opted in. So a business can't just send you messages because they somehow acquired your number. That does happen in other channels. but you can't do that with RBM. So you're receiving a message from a business who you've given your consent, and you can trust that the business is who they say they are.
Nice.
And I love that because 2FA has also become something that everyone's pushing for a lot, and SMS is the easiest way to get into two-factor authentication. But everyone knows that's like you mentioned, it can be so insecure. You've got the man-in-the-middle attacks. You don't always know who it's coming from. So that's quite interesting. But we did have a question from someone who's coming, unfortunately, just as a LinkedIn user. So thanks for that question. Is I didn't get how the users are addressed/reached. Is this phone number or something else?
Yeah, so I can take that one and add a bit more to Tim's answer. So it's a phone number, exactly. So the identifier hasn't changed at all. You use your same old phone number, whether you're using it for text, SMS, or for RCS as well. And I guess kind of when you ask the question, Dustin, it's a really good question about what's in it for consumers for consumer kind of P2P messaging. I think we've kind of got to be honest, kind of as a telco industry, we've lost a lot of that traffic because we haven't innovated fast enough in that space. This is why we all use, whether it's iMessage or WhatsApp or Facebook Messaging today, we just haven't innovated fast enough. And for us, I think this is now, we don't expect users to flock back necessarily from WhatsApp to Facebook. That's now ingrained in our culture. That's where a lot of our kind of friends and family personal conversations happen. But at least we're now giving people a choice. And they have a choice on Android now as well, not just iMessage. So it's there, and it's there for consumers to use if they want to give their data to Facebook. They can use Instagram, they can use WhatsApp, they can use Facebook Messenger. That's available for them to use. But now they have an alternative to offer a similar and very comparable experience baked into the native messaging app. But it's kind of, as Tim said, kind of, I think the real benefit for consumers is going to be probably less so on kind of conversations with friends and family, but more from the conversations that are already there today in the app right now, whether that's from your bank, from your doctor, whether that's a password reset. You can now receive that over RCS as a branded, verified message rather than just black and white, as it were, SMS.
Nice answer. Like that. Thank you, everyone who's putting comments in. We will get to them. VJ, that's a very good comment around APIs. We'll get to that in a moment. Michael, question around the payload. We will also get to that in a moment. The user, Dustin, who is on LinkedIn, is Paul Imre. I don't know why it hasn't come through here, but I can see it in the app. So, apologies, Paul. Our software here hasn't put your name on there for some reason. I don't know why. But what we'll get to those more kind of technical details in a moment. And David, you can tell us a bit more about the platform that's on offer, and we can have the discussions about how to go about doing this stuff. But to kind of maybe encourage people to understand a little bit about what kind of results they might be able to achieve if they were to kind of explore RCS messaging as a messaging channel to have interactive conversations with their customers. Elaine Jones, tuning in on YouTube, has said, do you have any stats that you can share from any campaigns? Or have you got any kind, I know you mentioned you've been doing some work with EE and stuff like that. Like, have you got any sort of, one, what's the use case example? And then two, what was the kind of impact? Have you got anything like that you might be able to share with us and share with the listeners to give them a little bit of inspiration about the potential of this stuff?
So Tim, do you want me to share some stuff we've been doing with EE? Maybe if you've got any other
Go ahead. Yeah,
fantastic. So in EE, of course, it's kind of one of those things that you own dog food, isn't it? So we've been working with our consumer team there, looking at and testing RCS as a channel. Of course, we already use things like SMS, MS, email, just as everybody else does to communicate with our users. And one of the things we've been testing exactly, kind of, are we going to get the same kind of great open rates that we see with SMS? Are people going to understand how RCS works? I know I kind of listened to your podcast, Kane, that kind of, I love kind of what people are doing with voice assistants and voice skills. But the challenge, I guess, I hear all the time again is, do we have to teach people? How do we educate people of what they can do with a voice assistant? And I guess our fear was, what's RCS going to be like? Is that going to be the same? Are we just going to have to start all over again and teach people that this is an RCS agent, this is what you can and can't do, and this is how it works, and this is how you start one, this is how you apply. And that's exactly why we've been testing it. And we've been testing it over the past year with our own customers, with our own brands, with our own products. So in terms of stats, which Elaine, great question, that we've seen, probably the most interesting one is the one which we ran a little while back now, but it was probably around just about before lockdown occurred in the UK, so probably March time. And that was with the S20 launch, the Samsung S20 launch. And that was a multi-channel campaign which we ran over RCS Business Messaging, SMS, MMS, and email. And kind of unsurprisingly across the board, we were getting some relatively good open rates. Of course, it's not so easy to track those over SMS and MS because you just don't get the read receipts that you get with email and RCS. But the really interesting thing kind of when we start to look down is the click-through rates. So unsurprisingly, email was by far the worst, as you'd expect. It goes into spam folders. People just don't open. You have way too many emails in your inbox. SMS and MS performed much better, as they usually do, than MS. But the outstanding number that we saw was actually RCS. We had 10 times the click-through rates into the campaign that we ran than the email campaign.
Wow.
Absolutely astounded us, and I'll be surprised if we ever beat that, to be honest. It's an incredible number, and that's because the campaign, I think, it wasn't just a message to every single EU user. That's not how this works. That's not how any marketing works nowadays. It was targeted to a segment of users who we thought would be interested in the product. It was part of a conversational campaign where we introduced them to the offer, why might be offering them the product, and gave them a range of options which was targeted to them. So a lot of the very usual tools you'd use in any kind of campaign, which is simply applied in a new channel. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here, but we got those 10x click-through rates into the campaign. But even more interestingly, probably as well, which is actually not just the click-through rates, but the purchases. We only targeted 5% of our user base who was appropriate for that campaign with the actual RCS message, but that 5% represented 25% of all purchases in the end. Huh. So we're really seeing the results. And we're not just using RCS as part of marketing, although it's really powerful for that, just outbound messages, but we can also use that for things like customer care now and use it for inbound communications as well to our brand.
In the show notes, and I don't know if this came from you, David, or you, Tim, someone put that the design of the agent or the campaign has a big impact on that success.
Yeah.
And taking advantage of what's available. What makes a good campaign?
So from that perspective, so this was not our first campaign. So our first campaign, I'll be honest, was dreadful. We actually, so we had the complete opposite. Actually, RCS had the worst click-through rate of any of the channels we went through. A complete disaster, and that is entirely our fault because of bad conversation design. So what we did was very similar kind of flow, but we said buy it now. And actually, people were very scared to click on the buy it now button. So one of the big differences between RCS and SMS is RCS has buttons, suggested replies. You can just tap to reply rather than type. So people were scared of clicking that button because they thought, oh, what's going to happen? Is it going to charge my credit card? Is it going to charge my mobile phone bill? Actually, what we should have said is find out more. And as soon as we changed that first campaign to find out more, we doubled our click-through rate. And actually, because it was actually that's the right call to action. So we've been learning about conversation design. It's a new skill for us. We haven't run a lot of conversational campaigns in the past and experiences in EE. It's relatively new for us, and so that learning and applying that has got us from that very, very low single-digit click-through rate to the 10x we saw in some of the later campaigns. Conversation design is absolutely central. It's not a silver bullet at RCS.
Yeah, well, one thing I would just add to that as well is support everything that David was saying there. I don't think your first campaign was that bad, was it, David? It was. I know it was better.
No, it was. I don't think we told you about that one, Tim. It was that bad. It was that bad. Kept that one quiet.
The other thing I wanted to add, from a developer side, I've been part of this with some marketing I was involved in several years ago, where we did some marketing campaigns, and we had to kind of put the campaign out there and then wait wait to see what happens. Are people going to respond? What are they doing? And it was a black hole, really. The tools we have with RBM, the capabilities that are there, mean that you can actually get metrics back very quickly. So you can see who's opened and read a message, what they've clicked on, what they've responded to, and you can see that in almost real time. So as a developer, you can launch a campaign and you can actually track it through its life, and you can improve on it. So if things aren't working initially as you want them to when you first launch, you can tweak that and make it a lot better. So as well as I talked about earlier, the verification and the trustworthiness, you can also use these metrics to really help you improve your campaign without having to wait, a longer period of time to see how that campaign went and then try and launch another one. You can do things sort of on the fly pretty much with the capabilities that are there. And that design is really, really important. Getting it right, as David was saying, I would stress that it is really important. We're seeing loads and loads of examples of really interesting use cases. Everything from parking cars to making charitable donations. I say parking cars, sorry, paying for car parking and charitable donations and lots and lots of other things that are coming through. We've got retail companies that sell furniture and all these kinds of things, as well as banks starting to use it for different use cases. So there's a myriad of opportunity that's out there, and it takes some skilled developers to get behind the wheel and build these campaigns out, launch them, and you see some great successes.
Interesting. You touched on payments there. I was going to save this till later when we get into the details of what it looks like to actually create something for this thing. But you mentioned payments there. So is it possible to take payments within the messaging application? Is that
Yes.
what you're saying?
Yeah, it is. Actually, I think a lot of people will expect that because this is a lot of this is powered by Google and the Messages client, which many users use as a Google-built client, that there's messages natively built in. There isn't actually yet. We don't have GPay and things built directly in there today. We're doing a lot of work around that. But we've already seen developers who have built their own payment links, payment capabilities into the conversation flow. So it's all perfectly possible, and it's all there, and there'll be more richness and more functionality to come.
Ah, so you mean you can, as a developer or as a company, you can essentially build into the messaging application the ability to receive someone's card information. Is that what it works?
I won't. I'm not a technical person, so I won't go into the very specific details there. But we've been working with. One of a developer has been that I've been a bit closer to. Have been working with the messaging tools and platform that Google provides. They've done I think it was with Oxfam, and it allows you as an Oxfam contributor member to be able to make donations through RBM. So they've developed that into the flow, and you can do that there. I won't comment specifically how they do that because I don't want to get that wrong. And as I say, what we're doing within Google is looking at building more richness and functionality into this to make it as smooth as experience for users as possible.
GPay integration would be absolutely ideal, wouldn't it? That's the dream. That like Android phone, GPay straight away, ideal. So, David, you hinted at this earlier on as well in terms of the kind of development capability or the development environment, and you saying that you had kind of been designing conversations for these things. So the way I'm imagining it at the moment is you've got a platform where people can go, sign up, log in. You can then design out your conversational architecture, and essentially you can then make that live. As soon as you start receiving phone numbers, you can then, start determining when you want to send what messages. That will kick users into a certain flow that you've designed. Is that correct? And do you want to tell us a bit more about, if that is correct, more about the platform, and if it's not correct, what does the platform look like?
Yeah, so I'll dive into that. Then probably it's best to talk about how the RCS developer platform is working, because that's managed and run by Google, and specifically how that works. But at the moment, so if you're developing a conversational experience, whether that's a chatbot or kind of connecting into kind of a live customer care agent, you should be able to use largely the tools that you've already got today. So whether that's kind of building an experience on Google's dialog flow, whether that's actually hard coding an agent in Python, using or working with a platform like Twilio. you should be able to take those conversations, and it's just another API, it's another channel that you would select for RCS. The difference would be is that you would want to tailor your conversation, the payload, to maximize utility of RCS, because there's things you can do in RCS which you can't necessarily do in other channels. So you wouldn't be fully utilizing it. Now, of course, that means that there are platforms out there who've specialized and have actually got dedicated development environments for you. They've got a visual user interface for you to actually kind of work through your conversational flow. So there's the whole variety of different options depending on whether you are kind of a developer who writes the code, or whether you're more of a no-code type developer. So all those options are available. The difference will be between RCS and other channels is that you always have to register your agent, and the reason you have to register your agent is because we need to do that brand verification piece that Tim was talking about earlier, so that you can have a secure environment within for consumers to experience this in. So Tim, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more about kind of the developer console and how that works.
Yeah, we have a developer console. As David says, we provide tools free of charge for any developer to use. David mentioned Dialogflow, which is a tool we have for building out the conversational AI chatbots, which is really good. And of course, lots of developers already use different tools. So we provide a platform and we provide an API. When we have a dev site where developers can go to that site and register, and we'll give you access to that, and you can start using the capabilities that we have there. I won't talk a lot more about it. I will. I'm sure Kane, you'll add in the show notes some of the links to that. The developers can go there today and start developing and experimenting with their bots. We've got hundreds of developers using this already. So it's continuously sort of being developed by our engineering department. So that is there for users to use today, for developers, sorry, to use today.
And the only thing I would add is kind of that's there for developers to experiment, to play around with. You can you can register demo devices, so that you can straight away, if you've got an Android device with Android messages, then you can straight away be playing around with it and experimenting with chatbot then and there. If you are a brand or you're wanting to launch a commercial RCS agent, then the process is slightly different, because we as a network, we can't work with hundreds and hundreds of different brands directly. We can't work with hundreds of thousands of different developers who might want to experiment with this platform. That's the sort of thing that Google typically do globally, but we can't do just locally in the UK. So if you want to launch an agent on directly kind of targeting users and interacting with users on the EU network, you have to be sending 1 million messages, typically a month, for us to be able to accept your agent directly via the Google platform. Otherwise, we would need you to go through one of our partners. So that's something which, we can put the link to that in the show notes for more information. That's simply because typically we're finding it's also with our partners, they've got the experience. They're the ones who are already using RCS. They can talk to you about how to do RCS fallback to SMS if you're trying to send a message to an Apple phone and it doesn't, of course, have RCS. You might want to still deliver it as an SMS. So they'll help you with all that stuff. So that's just the only little kind of caveat I'd add to that. So there is a little bit of complexity there.
Okay. And are those partners, would that be something like a Twilio or another sender, or is it like a
It's exactly those sorts of kind of the usual suspects. Exactly. So so the sorts of platforms who would be large senders of SMS and large senders of other messaging channels, those would be exactly the sorts of partners that you'd be able to connect to.
Cool. So I'm going to go back to VJ's comment from earlier on. I hope you're still tuned in, VJ, and apologies, it took us a while to get to your question. But so VJ, and Tim, you alluded to it just then. So VJ has asked, does it have APIs to integrate with chatbots? So I think we've established that it does, and that you can integrate with existing chatbots, which presumably means that you can almost mirror your chatbot experience in the RCS world. Only perhaps making some slight amendments and adjustments to cater for the enhanced functionality that exists over there. The question that I would have is that, and I don't know whether this is something that is, maybe is one to pick up with the platform team or whatever, but if you were to build something from scratch using the Google provided platform, does that have like the natural language understanding capability within it? Or would you need to use something like a Raza or a Dialogflow to get that natural language understanding?
Yeah, so part of the tools we have in our developer platform is Dialogflow. It's owned by Google, and that has NLU capability there. So we've got. It's not, as I said earlier, it's not the only tool. There's lots of others. There's lots of other companies, some of which I've worked for in the past, to develop and provide this capability as well. So you can use what we have as part of that platform, or you can kind of bring your own capabilities you have and leverage those.
Nice. Michael has got another question. Michael Kenny has got a question around, we're talking about payments and opt-in, engagement, payments. What about PCI compliance? Will that eventually become part of the platform that you build and publish through, or will that kind of remain the responsibility of the client, the company publishing the experience?
That is a good question that I can't answer today, unfortunately. I can refer that and try and get back to you, Michael, with what the plans would be and how that would work, but I can't answer that myself today, unfortunately. But we can look into that for you.
Cool.
I mean, I'll just say in terms of kind of not so much the client side, but I mean, for example, if you have a payments portal on your website, you could always have a conversational flow and say, right, we need you to take a payment. You can have a link. You can have a link that takes you straight through to the payments portal that you already have on the web and in the embedded web view, and you could take the payments through that mechanism. So you wouldn't necessarily have to do something specifically for the client. You could take an existing portal. Hopefully, you've got the personalization and you've got the connections in there that you've already pre-populated the basket, or they've got their details, so you've authenticated the user. They're not having to log back in again, because that would be a very kind of very clanky customer experience. But that's the sort of alternative. And similarly, I mean, there's already there are kind of experiences where you might want to charge it to your mobile phone bill. So for some use cases, actually doing charge to bill might be appropriate. So maybe things like car parking, you might charge it to your mobile phone bill rather than charge to a credit card, for example.
And so go ahead.
Just going to say, Michael, I found you on our directory. I will ping me offline and we can sort of discuss that a bit further if you want to. Yeah.
And so as we get to the top of the hour, if anyone has any further questions, definitely go ahead and share those in the chat and we'll try to work those in. But in the meantime, what are people not building on RCS today that you think they should? Are there companies that you think aren't looking at this and you go, that would be a perfect company to start using RCS?
From my perspective, I think because this has come out from kind of the SMS and kind of telco world, we're seeing a lot of people developing and kind of upgrading effectively those SMS experiences, which is kind of we love to see that. That's exactly what we'd expect. But on the flip side, actually, kind of it's kind of what we're seeing in terms of the voice world. I'm seeing all these fantastic, much richer, much more complicated conversational flows with voice assistants, and actually, I guess that's probably not what I'm seeing enough of. I'd love to see more and more of those conversational flows maybe designed for voice. Some of those would be absolutely perfect to be putting on an RCS channel if it's appropriate, because you've got the persistence there. You've got the persistence there you might not have with voice if you want to deliver visual content, whether it's photos or videos. People actually want to take those experiences offline and kind of chat to them as and when it's convenient for them. So that's the sort of thing I'd love to see more of.
Yeah, I would just add that just the nature of this, the async nature of this. So obviously, if you talk to your customers on the phone, which can often be a very appropriate thing to be doing, but many customers want to get information, get support, get help, whatever it might be, make a payment, do it quickly, pay for something, do it quickly, and they don't want to have to sit on the phone and wait to speak to someone or sit and try and navigate their way through an IVR. Messaging is just fantastic for dealing with this. And we are just seeing just hundreds and hundreds of different brands that do different things. So I'd venture into this space. As David was saying, most companies today use SMS, from sort of the local bakeries on the corner that we see to the big, multinational car manufacturers and all sorts. So it really is open to all types of industries to use. And we believe that going into the future, this will become one of the go-to channels for businesses to be using to have that conversational experience with their customers, but really something that the customer actually enjoys using and gets a lot of benefit from.
When are the next elections in the UK? Is this perhaps a vector for politicking?
Maybe.
Well, I think then they're not for another 4 years. I think we had our most recent one a while ago. So I won't speculate, but there's time.
Yeah, I mean, just in some use cases, we've seen different in different countries. We've seen some of the carriers, the mobile network operators, actually been providing help and advice around the COVID situation we're in to their subscribers, and that has been a fantastic use case because you can actually send people information which is graphical and can have videos and imagery in there. So anything about symptoms, about rules and regulations they need to pay attention to, and a kind of Q&A, and it can all be automated, or it can shift to a live chat person if that's applicable. So we're seeing kind of lots of use cases being built very, very quickly to deal with things that are happening, as and when they happen. So there just are great use cases. I know in the US that messaging is a highly used channel in the campaigns and the political campaigns. I'm not so sure how much it is used in the UK, but 4 years time, let's hope it is.
Well, the UK tends to kind of follow US trends in lots of cases, doesn't it? Certainly where kind of media and advertising and such is concerned. So maybe that's what it'll be. Maybe you'll be able to have a little kind of like, RCS conversation with the candidates and figure out what they're all about.
Yeah, well, that'd be perfectly possible. Yeah.
Nice. Wicked. Well, Tim, David, this has been absolutely immense. Paul has said this has been really useful thanks to the team and to the contributors, and I think that I don't even think that goes far enough. I think that it's been absolutely enlightening, everything we've learned today in terms of the potential for RCS and the I think the I want to call it like dynamism. Is it? Would you describe it as that? It's a lot more dynamic, feel rather than SMS texting, that kind of stuff. I know that WhatsApp and stuff like that, the business chat is starting to gain a bit of kind of traction, but I think that you can't beat the default on a phone. The default is the default, isn't it? Default wins 9 times out of 10, and so I think that the more Android phones that get this kind of capability on there, I think that the opportunities are absolutely huge. And as soon as when you can start kind of enabling payments, enabling rich conversations, and really rich user engagement, I think it's potential is absolutely massive. So I'm looking forward to rolling my sleeves up a little bit and diving in.
No, it's been an absolute pleasure, and we're happy to help out developers and where we can, and we really look forward to more and more joining the ecosystem and really making the most of it. And
you've got a developer day coming up, David.
Yes, that's right, actually. So not me, but us and Google. So we're going to be running a workshop November 4th. So yes, just after the US elections, but just before the UK's bonfire night. So 4th of November, I think, okay, maybe you can share the link in the show notes, but that's for anybody who wants to find out a bit more and also get their hands dirty building up a conversational agent. We'll be using Dialogflow, I think, for that. But yeah, come and join us. We're going to be trying to run a series of events over the next coming months, just to kind of make sure that people have got the tools they need, and also get feedback as well. It's still kind of, as Tim said, RCS is quite an old technology, but it's still relatively early days kind of launching this, enabling businesses to use this. So to get feedback as well of what we should be doing different to build it better.
Nice one. We'll put the links to that in the show notes. And you mentioned the platform earlier on, Tim. Where can people find that? Where can people go to learn more about this and start kind of, rolling the sleeves up and playing about with some of this stuff?
They can go to jive.mobile.com. I need to check. I will send you the link. So you can put that in the show notes.
Indeed, we will do just that. Thank you both so much. It's been absolutely unbelievable. We'll stick the links to all of that stuff in the show notes. We'll stick your kind of contact details and stuff in there as well, in case people want to reach out and figure out how they can kind of get onboarded and things like that. And thank you everyone for joining in and for tuning in and for putting your questions down there and participating. It's been really, really good. Next week we will be chatting with Mike Zagorsek from SoundHound about all of the various ins and outs of SoundHound and what it's like to build your own independent voice assistant and how you can use SoundHound to do the same. Thank you again, Tim. Thank you, David. Thank you everyone for tuning in. And until next time, see you later.
Cheers.